Alright, I'm gonna call the November 4th, 2025 planning board meeting to order. First item on the agenda, actually before I get there, just a note for the minutes that Josh Gordon is participating remotely. I think the board has to approve that. Does anyone on the board have any opposition to Josh participating remotely? Alright. First on the agenda is approval of the October 28th draft meeting minutes. Cal mentioned she just sent those out earlier today. This is a sort of short turnaround for our meeting. I would take a motion to postpone consideration of the draft minutes until the next meeting.
Or I'll move that.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Do we have to do that by roll call?
Thanks for the reminder, Josh. That is correct, because one member is remote. We have to have a roll call vote so that the individual members say aye or nay. I think in that case, everyone said aye. Yeah, so you can mark it as,
Yeah, I can delete all I by roll call.
okay. All right, next is continuation of Hildreth Farm, West Road hearing. Start us off, Sam, I think the one thing that we had requested was some sort of exhibit showing the turning radius wouldn't be an issue for fire trucks.
Yes. So for the record, Sam Foisey with Meridian Land Services. It's a pretty boring exhibit if you're not into civil engineering. But this represents a ladder fire truck being able to take a right-hand turning maneuver into the entrance, which is the more restrictive turning movement. We then can easily pass around the loop. And then we just started another one here just for the purposes of this, where if the truck makes it to the end, they can back up and then exit out. It's pretty, given that this is a road design and not maneuver around a tight site with parking spaces and landscaping and everything like that, it's pretty easy to maneuver a fire truck through this site. And I can provide this as an exhibit for the town's records, if you wish. I
think it'd be helpful to have in the file
It
in
will
case
be.
anyone requests a copy. I don't think it needs to be part of the subdivision plan.
Yes.
But before to add on to that, I did speak with Ken Folsom, who was here last time I was reporting back to the fire chief. He said the fire chief had no concerns with the responses to the other things that he had raised. So one piece was just to make sure we followed up on this.
How long was, for the truck that you used, how long was that ladder truck?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it's in the above 40. I wanna say it's like 43, but I'm not,
Okay.
I don't know specifically. I can include that as a diagram here on the side, just that way for the record. If we're still on the fire topic, also what I included on this plan here is added two more, well, we're not proposing this, but just demonstrating. Two more fire systems can be added along within this easement. We also expanded the easement, we could expand the easement if the board wishes, to this open space over here. I'm sorry, Megan, that you're kind of stuck behind the corner. Here, if this site needed additional fire suppression, so there's ample room to increase the easement size, or the fire system size if the commercial lot needs additional capacity.
How big can it be?
Well, right here I increased it by 20,000 gallons, so this could fit 50,000 where we are proposing 30. And then this area here can fit probably about 30,000 as well.
How much would a commercial, the pad you're talking about on the road, the commercial spot on the road, what's the, I don't know, regulations or rule of thumb or normal that how many gallons cistern would be regarded as sufficient?
That's way above my pay grade, but from kind of experience with dealing with some architects and fire designers, it can range. So if you're doing a lumber yard that basically has a bunch of firewood underneath the building, you need a fairly substantial system, and then it depends on the size of the building, and I think it depends on how much fire flow you need for, I think, 2 hours, and you might know better than me here, but
You can back up, but my question is, I think, the better stated, is there enough room for a cistern that would be sufficient for a commercial use, for a commercial use, or is it insufficient so that the commercial use which you hope will show up will say, sorry, not enough room for a cistern?
For the size of the lot and what you would expect a use to go there, I would say that there is ample room for, the 30,000 gallons is ample for what you would expect to go there. There's a big caveat on there if you have some really obscure use that has a hazardous material that you can't put out and might need more. But then they'll be limited to, the size of the building will be limited to the fire suppression system at that point.
Would the limit be below that which you expect to attract at that place?
I would say so, cause if you expect it to be a convenience store or I'll use Dunkin' Donuts or a office or a restaurant or something like that, 30,000 is ample. If you get into gas stations, they might need a little bit more, but they have a different type of fire protection system to put out a different type of fuel. But we're proposing 30, and there is enough room to get another 50,000 here, which is pretty substantial when it comes to fire suppression.
Thank you.
I always look to Scott for these fire questions. Go, you're a resident local fire expert, and we're like,
So those are also above my grade. I
Yeah.
mean, we're really delving into fire protection engineering.
But I think fair to say that if we get a site plan review for a particular use, that at that time, I think it is helpful to know that there is additional space where more could be put, but
Yeah.
the proposal would be limited to whatever they can safely put there,
And
so.
I think Sam's answer was a good one, you know, what can we reasonably expect to have going there? So
I have to imagine that an extremely flammable use is something that the people whose houses are backed right up to that commercial lot probably would not be thrilled about anyways.
Alright, thank you.
Does that mean we are asking for an easement for that extra section or not?
We have no problem granting that easement if the board wishes, or not granting the easement, but adding the easement to the final plans if the board wishes, and we could have that be a condition of approval.
It seems to make sense, so you don't have to
It
go
does.
through it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess it
You'd
could,
just be putting landscaping there.
yeah, for that, and we could have landscaping further back too, so that way if you do have to put it in, you're not digging up good mature landscaping. Essentially not throwing away money.
I guess my point is, it's not like there's a substantial plan for what's happening in that area if it does not have an easement for potential future
and
cisterns.
I imagine they can probably draft it in a way that it's, the easement, it's available if needed for this commercial lot one, during site plan review to meet these fire needs or whatever, so they can figure that part out. But it doesn't have to be, you know, reserved for something that it won't ultimately use. Greg, I thought you ended that with starting a second thought, and I'm not
No,
sure if
I
I'm
was just
mistaken.
asking whether
Okay.
we were going,
So,
if we were doing it, or not.
Yeah, so it sounds like that's the board's wish, right, is to.
I think, yeah, at a minimum, it should be drafted in a way that you reserve it as an easement, that's to the extent that that commercial site needs it, it's available. And if it ends up not needing it and goes through site plan, it can
Yeah,
terminate or something to that
in addition, if
effect.
this one needs to be expanded too, we can draft those condo documents to reflect that.
That way, it's the plan we approve doesn't limit or end up preventing a viable commercial use that we can't prevent. I do appreciate the time, there were an awful lot of notes to go through, and it was very helpful to have that time to go back through all the plans with the review documents and the responses and everything else. Does anyone on the board have questions now that they've had more time to look at the plans about the specifics of any of those changes, anything else that we didn't cover, or any of the notes that are listed?
I have a question. I'm not sure it's addressed by the document you're looking at. The applicant mentioned, last week, we talked about a the making of the pad. I don't know the technical words of the commercial spot on the road. Have you considered doing that same thing for the commercial spot on the south side of the lot?
The south side of the lot is far away from most of the development, and it would involve probably improving that roadway through there. Also, it's pretty substantially prepared, it's flat, it really doesn't even probably have that good of loam on top of it, you dug some test pits out there. So it pretty much just needs to be stripped when it comes time, and right now it's in a stable condition. So there's no sense to destabilize it, just to flatten it out more
You
than
don't
it
wanna
already
create an
is.
erosion problem in the meantime.
Well, I guess the nature of my concern is, I think you talked a lot last week about, making a commercial site-ready place for the commercial site on the north end of the lot.
Mhm.
And if we're going to attract commercial uses, that sounded like a good idea. And then, so my question is, maybe we should do that for the south side of the lot too, to ensure that a commercial use actually shows up. And the other half of the other side of my question is, what are the types of things that a commercial use would have to do? Are the things that a commercial user would have to do in the south side prohibitive, you talked about the alteration of terrain permit as on the north side is a important, having leapt through that is important to a commercial use. Can we do those sorts of things on the south side for the same purpose?
Yeah, so let me kind of take that in a two-part approach, where the front and the back. So the front lot is close to, it is close to the overall development. It also is constrained in size, and that's where it was important to include that lot in the master stormwater plan. So that we could take that stormwater off of that lot and move it somewhere else and accommodate for it. And the way to accommodate for it is to stub a culvert pipe to that lot, so that's prepping that lot for stormwater. Also, it is, if they were to drill a individual well on that lot, those well radiuses would go over lot lines, which the state really doesn't allow you to do unless you have well releases. We wanted to avoid that, and then a well on that lot also impedes the ability for septics in that area. So that's where we decided to extend our water supply system to it. So it basically allows that lot to be 100% used for the use that will eventually go there. And then with doing so, since you're already there, we plan to clear it and level it, and that way it looks like a pad ready site. Once you clear it and level it, you then need to stabilize it, just because if this goes in 6 months, that's great. If it goes in 2 years, you need to make sure there's stabilization. So you can either do that with compacted gravel, which kind of becomes a little unsightly because you get some weeds through it, or you do that with loam and seed. And so we would propose here to loam and seed it, so that way when they're mowing and maintaining the areas, they can just mow it and it will look like a field there, but it would also look like a ready to go lot. Then when you move into the second half of the property, the commercial site, you are far away from the overall development area. What we did to prepare that lot for development is we already have that incorporated in our AOT we haven't submitted for AOT, but I have it incorporated in our stormwater design to include a certain percentage of impervious, which I think is 75%, which is fairly substantial, and a basin size appropriately for that. So in a way, while we're not doing any physical activity out there to prepare it for development, we've done a major permitting lift, because we're already going through this permitting lift of for the AOT permit on the residential in the front portion, so why not go through it and just tag it on? I mentioned the stabilization of the front lot. I really wouldn't wanna do anything to the back to destabilize it, cause it's already in this condition that I would want to leave that lot in. If I was prepping it for a building pad. I don't know if that answers.
It almost answers, if I were a commercial user and wanted to, and was interested in developing on the south side, are my steps to do that substantial or insubstantial?
They are reduced, right? So we've taken a step here, one, permitting it through you guys. And two, once we permit it through the state, they don't have to go get that state permit. They just have to come back before you and present the site plan to go along with it. And as long as they are below my assumptions made of 75% pervious, which I could pretty much, I can almost stake my career on that they will be, unless they're doing something fairly absurd and really covering it with parking lot. It's ready to go. It just needs to come back before you, and then if the process is quick through this board, it will dictate how long it takes for them to develop the site. But we'll at least take the state out of it, which the state has anywhere from a 50-day review period all the way up to a 120-day review period, depending on how busy they are. And they fluctuate between that, like at the end of winter is usually a little bit lower, cause that's when everyone has gotten through all the other designs. Right now, it's typically longer, cause everyone's trying to get their permits done and ready to go.
Thank you.
I have a question. So are you building the basin for that back lot or not building the basin for the back lot?
We are not building the basin for the back lot.
And I think you said you are not extending the road back today.
Correct, yeah, and that's why we have that turnaround, there. Yeah, the phase one.
And just to clarify, you're saying that the AOT permit that you're getting from the state for the residential area is going to encompass the front lot, so that
Yes.
one permit's both of that, but it would be a different permit when you ultimately get to the back lot, or is it
It'll be a
one for the
different
entire
permit
site?
through you, through this board, when you get to the back lot, it will not be a different permit through AOT, cause
Gotcha.
it's already been accounted for.
Okay, so the AOT is for all parts.
And that is, again, for marketing this property, that is a huge lift. The way that
So
is
the
done.
AOT is done for the back lot? I mean, assuming this all goes.
Yeah, assuming as we get through this board tonight, we would be submitting to AOT right after this. I also would say an AOT permit isn't a small feat. I have a ton of clients where the threshold is 100,000 square feet, and I get forced to shrink the site down to 98,000 square feet, and it's a pain, and no one ever really wants to go through it, and since we're already going through it on this, we've added this in just to make it easier for the next person.
And it does set you up upon those approvals that you can then start designing things, or an engineer can start designing site plans based on the assumptions Sam's already made here. So that in terms of marketing this, if you say my use is X, it has this type of parking requirement in this size building, you then know what the parameters of the site as approved are, and you can kind of, not to, undersell what engineers and architects do, but you can kind of plop it onto what's been approved already.
Thank
So
you for simplifying my career.
so that you've moved down the road substantially, which again is something that makes the end user see the attraction to this site. Sorry, Sam.
We'll be looking for you to simplify lawyering, your next.
So I'm looking at sheet 2, the general notes. I think 21 seems to be consistent with what you were describing, which is if the prep work for commercial 1 is going to be loamed and seeded until eventually, a site plan and a building is put on it. On 28, talks about assumption of liability prior to something being accepted by the town. Is there anything in this that you are intending the town's taking, I assume that's kind of just a placeholder, but if not,
No, that's a
That could be-
placeholder subdivision note that I haven't deleted out of it, so.
okay, so that could be struck.
Yep.
On 13, and this is kind of a continuance of our discussion in terms of the drivability of the subdivision, the walkability of the subdivision. One thing that we didn't discuss a week ago is whether or not you'd be open to this being a one-way street for the subdivision, and that would make it simpler and safer just in terms of one-way traffic for people, and then if it's one-way traffic, it's easier in terms of if there is overflow from houses for events, that they're on one side and then it's easier. Is that something that you guys have considered at all, if strong feelings either way?
I haven't considered it at all, so this is the first hearing, I don't think it's a bad idea, but I personally prefer the two-way, and 24 feet wide, I think that we could maybe even stripe out a section for people to walk on, but what's your thoughts on it?
And we could consider it.
Yeah.
But typically when you do one, you're gonna shrink the pavement area down to like 18 feet.
Yeah.
But I think what you were just saying, you could go, say 22, and leave a walking line.
Yeah. So
Does that-
I guess we're not
the-
we're not fully against it.
Alright, cause it seemed to me that might be somewhere closer to that compromise where there were the board who really wanted like a designated walking area, maybe not a sidewalk, but to your point of a walking line, and then you don't need the entirety of the space for two-directional traffic.
Yeah, so let me, I guess counter it with our own proposal that we've kind of discussed ahead of this, is, we have 24 feet of pavement. A lot of times you see some, lower volume roads go down to 18 feet. So there is some room there if we wanna stripe out the 4 to 6 feet there. If we wanna keep the roadway 20 foot wide, or if we wanna, there's the travel way 20 feet wide, or reduce it down to 18, we could create a visual barrier. Also, with this being private roads, we could, New Hampshire post roads at 30 miles an hour. Since it's private, we can post it at whatever we see fit, so that could be 25, 20, or 15 if the board would see the benefit in that.
Yeah,
So we have kind of two ideas on the table, which I don't think we're not against yours, but since we came up with ours, we obviously prefer ours.
I have one question, and I guess it's sort of for Sam as the engineer here, but if this were one way, it means that each car that comes in does the full loop.
Very good.
Whereas if you have the first few cars, they would only go in for 40 feet, and then when they left, come out and do 40 feet as opposed to doing the whole loop. So I think you have the possibility of adding more overall traffic miles traveled on the loop if it's one way, requiring the full lap every time. It's just something to think about, and again, not an engineer.
That's a great point, so.
Yeah, I thought of that piece, I thought of, which sort of side you'd wanna go in if you wanted to make it so you don't have a bunch of people miss the entrance and have to turn around.
Yeah, and then.
But then I there were some concerns, but
To kind of piggyback on that, I could foresee someone that if they're living in this house and this is the one way, I could see them just say screw it and go the other way. But I hate when I
how
take a
you
cynic-
market is maybe different
I
than
hate
how
when I
people
have a
use it.
cynical look at the world, assuming people are gonna not follow the rules, but
Probably assume people are not
I
gonna follow
know.
rules.
Alright, so, from those.
I can't imagine anyone's taking that far end corner at 30 miles an hour based on my sense of how this law is laid out.
Absolutely, and so, people think that speed limits dictate speed of the roadways, but it's actually the geometry.
Yes.
And how narrow a roadway is that typically, allows vehicles to go fast and.
And I mean, you should post it appropriately, but also
Yes,
how often are
but
the police
like,
going to be monitoring it?
How often are you gonna be coming in this entrance and whipping around that corner to get to here? Probably not, cause you're probably gonna come in this way, and by the time you make that turn, you're not gonna, I hope you're not flooring it to get to your neighborhood, but then again, like you said, people don't follow the rules.
People do
but-
not follow the rules.
I do think, we talked about it this summer, that Sam and I both live in neighborhoods that have sort of this geometry, and we both, wave to traffic that, hey, we live here, kids live here, let's slow it down, so there is some of that neighborhood peer policing that happens with these as well.
If it's two-way, then each lane is 12 feet, right? 24 divided by 2 is 12.
Yes, if we don't shrink that down and have like the striped shoulder.
Right, so if you have a striped shoulder and it's two-way, each lane is
You can make it 9 feet or 10 feet,
9 feet.
which a lot of towns do have different thresholds for roadway widths, depending on the level of traffic, and since this isn't this really isn't a collector road or an arterial road, you could definitely justify shrinking this down to 18 or 20 if you don't feel like going that low.
You're not gonna have people parking on both sides of the road at that point.
No, you wouldn't, cause you would have a striped area and you could even put no parking signs, if you want.
I think we did talk about no parking, the last meeting, didn't we?
Well, I had a whole conversation
No
about
on
where
street,
are
no
people's
on
guests
street
going to park.
And whether or not it becomes a sort of condo issue, but of the two things I think we're talking about now, this is sort of more how it's laid out, which is less under just the control of the condo and their policing, so one way with or without that walking line, or two-way with, I think they vary, but 4 to 6 foot walking lane. Of those two options that are sort of fresh, any thoughts? I'd like to hear from other people if there's a preference, none of them, any of them, does that help with any of the concerns about ensuring that the neighborhood remains walkable?
I think changing to a one-way traffic pattern here creates a different traffic pattern problem with people coming in and out that we would have to look at to, I mean, and really this is probably your job, but like, that's a whole other traffic issue.
Okay. I guess avoiding the one-way issue and the fact that we haven't really thought it through, or had an issue to think through the other alternative of two-way, but ensure that there's a sort of marked walking lane, so it's not a separate sidewalk, but it is still a marked area for people in the neighborhood to use.
Maybe combined with a really low speed limit.
Alright,
So I'd go with we're going with the two-way, and are they 9-foot lanes or 10-foot lanes? You said that narrower lanes tend to reduce traffic speed
They do, so.
and more space for people to walk on is nice, but that would be my inclination.
alright,
Mr. Chair, in the middle, I know there's a question here open, but one thing we thought about as well in terms of excess parking is that park and ride is a public lot, right?
that's a state lot, so I believe it's
Yeah.
public, I don't know what
Just
limits they
thinking
have.
that, you know, on the days that we talked about where there might be the most people parked here on things like Thanksgiving, I think there's probably far fewer commuters using the parking ride. So there's some excess parking space there in the opportunity that if you're having that birthday party or that there is sort of
Yes.
randomly pre-built in the area,
Can we
additional parking.
circle back to parking in 1 second? 'Cause I think we're sounded like we're sort of building a consensus there, that sounds like people would like to see that alternative of, say, 9-foot two-way traffic with a marked walking lane of the remainder, and that helps with those 9,
If we could interject.
definitely, yeah.
We're feeling like better to have 10, 10 and 4.
Yeah.
Four is plenty for walking, biking,
Okay.
and I'm a little concerned, honestly, like a 9-foot parking space is
Yeah.
okay, but for driving, I think it's a little tight. Might be concerned about safety.
Noted, so well, amend what I was saying, but in the sense of seeing two-way traffic, 10-foot lanes, 4-foot walking area, any opposition to making that? Megan,
Good.
I have a preference, that sounds reasonable.
alright,
No,
Greg Rich, Josh?
fine.
Combined with the really low speed limit, I think that's fine.
And,
We can post it at 20.
alright, 20. Let me just, I have a list of conditions when we circle back.
Yeah.
Agreed. Auto association, if they wanted to post it at anything, they can lower.
You say 20 or lower, let them decide. Okay, on parking, one of the things we talked about last week was part of the difficulty in committing to 1 versus 2 car garage is design flexibility. And I can't remember if I asked this question, so I'll just circle it now. I think, is the plan to have at least 1 garage, and would you be willing to accept that whatever house designs you're building have at least 1 garage, or do you have in your lineup of houses?
I would think they're all gonna have garages.
Okay. So would you be willing to agree to that as a condition, that each residential
Just if a
unit?
resident for some reason didn't want a garage, I didn't wanna pigeonhole this to saying no. You know, if a
Yeah.
buyer said, I want a room instead of a garage. But I mean, we anticipate that all want garages.
And each of the lots can accommodate at least 1 car garage, probably 2.
Alright,
And that's already baked into the sizing on the lots.
90% of everybody's gonna want a garage.
I would do the same
From my
way.
experience, yeah.
thoughts from anyone else on the board on parking and as relates to any conditions related to garages parking? I mean, we talked pretty extensively about the driveway distance. Attorney Leno mentioned the parking ride is another alternative that people might be able to use if they are having larger events.
I'm not sure that's state.
Yeah,
We don't wanna be sanctioning something that we don't know that the
I don't
state is
think
gonna.
that we are sanctioning it, I'm just talking about what's potentially there. I certainly wouldn't say, you know, you have to use this or anything like
Or
that.
even that you can, I don't, that it's, the state puts it in for a certain use, I don't know if they. Somebody's gonna be parking their RV there or something for a period of time, they're not gonna like it.
I know it does get heavily used during the week. I've gone by there and the place is full.
Yeah.
On weekends, it's empty. I'm not sure what the pattern is in there.
Yeah, and you see that in various
Yeah.
places where there's the shared parking metrics, where the perfect example is that a church has busy parking really 1 time a week and then less other times, which means that you have that asphalt that can be used for a better purpose occasionally without interfering with that. So if this is something that's geared toward weekday travel, you would assume a park and ride tends toward commuting. And I think more get-togethers are probably on the weekends, but I agree with Mr. Mead's comments that we don't wanna speak out of turn about something the state has control of.
Rich?
But I
did
mean,
you
frankly,
say
people
about
probably will use
parking
it that
on
way
one
unless
side?
there's something preventing
So-
them, which I don't think there is.
I mean, I think where we left it is,
We've got
you know,
2
it's sort of the
lanes.
condo association can do what it wants in terms of how people are going to park. Sort of
So,
on or off those
well,
areas.
the reason why I ask is,
Yeah.
is connected to that 4 foot wide pedestrian lane. Where is that gonna be, right in the middle? Or is it gonna be on one side or the other, or, you know, will there be no parking on one side? Will it be opposite where the pedestrian lane is? Will that encumber
It
the
would,
2 lanes you have?
it would be on one side, and I haven't brainstormed whether that's on the inside or the outside of the loop, where people tend to walk the shortest distance, so it makes sense to put on the inside, but if you put it on the outside, you have more visibility of the person walking around the corner, so I haven't kind of weighed that option.
Safer.
Yeah, like what,
And-
and you get into human tendencies where, again, you typically take the shortest route, so it doesn't make, it probably still makes sense to put it on the inside, cause you ever see those sidewalks where then they're connected by a dirt path because no one
Desire
wants to,
paths,
follow them.
What was the name of it?
desire paths.
Yeah, I mean,
They have a few
Yeah.
names, but that's one of them.
I was gonna say, ultimately, it's gonna be a private road, I mean, I think the key is that we're ensuring it's designed in a way that, you know, they can self-regulate, but that they're leaving enough area that, you know, if the owners association, if they have a marked walking lane and it's in the conditions that they can force, you know, people who are parking in the wrong areas to move, that kind of thing.
I'm just thinking, you know, a lot of things that we're trying to stipulate and how are we throwing hurdles in front of this condo association that unnecessarily restrictive for them to have to regulate. I mean, it's just,
Well, that's where I don't, yeah, I'm disinclined to say like, no parking in this particular area versus this particular area and limit how they can figure out how to use their private road.
But the lines
But
are
ensuring
gonna be
that-
painted on the road already when
Right,
they get there.
ensuring that there's, you know, a starting point of a walking lane, it gives them the tools to make sure it's.
But there is an emergency service question here about, so you don't want certainly don't want parking on two sides, because then you're starting to impede your passageway, aren't you?
I would think so,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, you're starting to impede the flow of traffic, I think,
right,
as well.
yeah, I think it would be no different, than fire apparatus or police vehicles or the average person just trying to get through.
a wide ambulance.
Right, fire truck is a lot more,
Yep.
wide thing.
Yeah.
School bus, although this seems like a place where a school bus would probably pick up at the entrance of the development, not go house to house.
That's where I would envision it to be.
Maybe at the hypothetical cistern, nice.
At the hypothetical system.
Alright. Any other, just looking at sort of conditions or changes related to parking or traffic?
Actually,
think
that school bus question is a good one, because the school bus will not go around that loop. Will they come onto the, I mean, they usually don't go onto a private road at all, and the
No.
pickup is on the street, and then you got kids on West Street there, that's not good, so what's the plan there?
I would think that.
Having experience as a bus driver, they won't go on that private way, so it'll be out on West Street, there'll be a stop. And if there's signage that are needed with the school bus stop ahead or whatever, that's dictated by the state. We're at the public road, they'll pick up the kids on the end of the private
Yeah,
road.
same thing as everyone else that lives on West Street, if they have a kid, the school bus will just stop on West Street.
And,
Which of course does mean that any kids who are getting picked up by that bus are probably walking from their house
Yep.
to wherever that bus picks up. Does that would include them, you're saying they're getting picked up on West Street, so that includes them walking like past that commercial lot number 1 there?
I guess I assumed the striping of the sidewalk conversation, included,
Includes going out, all the way out to West Road?
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
okay. The only other thing I had on that list is whether we need to specify, or there needs to be just marked as stop signs between those intersections of the residential loop, so that they're not blasting out, or whether that's something that they're just going to sort of figure out on their own.
We would put stop signs at the end of the streets, yeah.
Alright. Moving off of traffic and parking, unless anyone else has anything else, are there, sorry, I'll pivot. One of the things we talked about was some sort of physical marker at the back of units 10, 11, and 12, between their limited common area and the undisturbed designated open space.
We're putting split rail fence
Okay.
that's kind of
So
broken apart.
along that line, and what we didn't talk about is potentially adding a physical barrier between the roadway and the infiltration ponds, both at those other 3 and what were the numbers? So the bottom 2, the 2 there. But basically, yes, if you're gonna have an infiltration basin with like a you know, a larger drop off and it's collecting water, having something that both protects the basin and protects people from going off, whether it's rocks or fence or something else in those 2 areas. And same for where the commercial lots in the back would abut the boundary of the infiltration open space area.
Yeah, so the basins aren't very deep, I think this one's 4 feet and this one is 2 to 3 feet. and then there is some separation off of the edge of pavement. So are you looking for,
So Greg, is this something that was done in a prior development with either requiring rocks or bollards?
It was done at the vending place, exit 18, it was done at exit 17 on one of the McCurley properties. Yeah, to keep like I had, it keeps snow removal from being pushed into the basin was one of the concerns, but also to keep cars from going into it accidentally or whatever.
you suggested boulders? Is that
Well,
right?
I think, would a split rail be an issue, like too, if they just extended the split rail around that, or they, yeah, I mean,
I don't know,
But split rail's not
boulders
stopping
is
the
what
car.
it's not, but it's,
people have found
It's a
is the
visual,
issue.
visual barrier,
Yeah.
yeah.
The boulders are more decorative and they're permanent, I would do that.
okay.
And stronger.
Are you fine with
Yeah.
boulders?
I think boulders is fine, I just wasn't
Yeah.
sure if you guys wanted boulders, cause you'd already mentioned the fence for the other area.
I know where you can
Alright.
get some.
I wanna know
Everywhere.
that's a yes,
Anywhere,
we will do the boulders.
Alright,
everywhere, anywhere.
Granite State.
This is like the one lot where I don't know if you can get the boulders.
That one,
Yeah.
And maybe a lower boulder
just gotta smush a
lot in
bunch of
lot
sand
places.
together at high temperature.
Yes, for thousands of years. I don't think we have that kind of time.
Sorry, I'm like slowly making my way back through the conditional use permit topics. We talked last week about proposed architecture was going to be Cape, Colonial, or Ranch. I'd like to have a condition sort of about the styles, and it can be all of those. Are there other ones you need to add to that? I mean, cause you had showed us some architectural styles. I think it's fair to ask for a condition that residences be one of, and you can have a lot of flexibility there, but have a defined list.
New England farmhouse.
Do we care if someone wants to build a yurt? I mean, why should we list the design?
I mean, we might not, as a board, we can, under 6.5C6, which has us take into consideration proposed architecture. This was a discussion topic 2 or 3 meetings ago where they had proposed styles.
Yes.
And so, you know, whether or not you like those specific styles, there's sort of a, you know, if you want a particular aesthetic, limiting the total amount of styles as opposed to, you know, if we don't have anything, the giant rectangle box that has, you know, a window per side kind of thing.
I don't get the vibe these guys wanna build yurts.
Yeah, probably not. My point being, I'm open to the styles they suggest, but it's helpful to have a limit, and then we have some understanding of what they're gonna look like going forward.
I'm more concerned that they're not all cookie cutter identical, but if somebody wants to build a yurt, I feel like it's not really our business to tell somebody what kind of house to build.
I mean, you could commit that they're not gonna be all
They're
identical.
not gonna be a
They'll
yurt.
be similar but not identical.
Right, and I get that, it's more that,
Yeah.
you know, you gave us some styles, they sounded fine, as opposed to the unknown. Any strong thoughts, one way or the other? I mean, we could just not have anything and let it come what
Fine
may.
with the, 4 or 5 that were,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had those three and you
Broad
added New England
constraint.
farmhouse.
I would
Yeah.
agree.
There's a lot in the master plan about the character of the town.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
those all sound fine and.
Cape Colonial
in
Ranch or New England farmhouse.
keeping with the general character of the town. I'm also not opposed to yurts, so like I said, I don't think those guys wanna build a yurt.
Cubist modernism.
Cubist modernism would look a little out of place here.
Alright. Talk about the cistern piece, so as I go through. Doing that.
We do have a weird concrete igloo in town, but that's been here for a long time.
I built my house and it doesn't fit into any of those categories, so it's.
Look, honestly, I love the weird concrete igloo and
But,
I would
I mean, the
love
rest of our houses have larger lots where they're not, you know, forced into a cluster subdivision. Alright, think I hit most of these, we'll circle back to the condo docs piece, but one that I wanna make sure that we talk about, 6.4, oh, it's got a letter before a number, hold on. I4 is the planning board shall require a program for future monitoring of easements and permit conditions affecting the designated open space. I don't know that our town is set up or wants to be in the business of proactively doing anything. It seems an easy answer is add a condition that, you know, the town may enter on and expect the designated open space as is reasonably necessary to determine compliance, something to that effect where there's a reasonableness that's not just, you know, the town can go there anytime, but that the town has some right to inspect it.
The town
Should it
does,
want.
the town does monitor numerous similar easements, so conservation.
Every year?
easements.
Yeah, conservation
Yep.
though, but this isn't a conservation easement.
Well, so yes.
So would that be a big lift on the select board, so it's one more that you
No,
want
it
to
would-
sort of proactively
It would be one more.
be checking?
Yeah.
Do you,
I think that
where this easement, or I think the way, and we'll talk about sort of the legal instruments for it, but the ordinance envisions not a conservation easement or an easement for the benefit of the town, which is part of why I think there needs to be something saying the town can check, 'cause it envisions it being deeded to an owners association, which is obligated to continue, you know, monitoring these things.
I don't think that having the town have some sort of enforcement mechanism is a bad idea in the condo docs, because we talked about twice annual mowing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
It gives the opportunity that if for some reason that didn't go in time and it starts to look like a low scrub forest, the town can be like, guys, you have a responsibility here.
yeah, and we would have that, I think, code enforcement issue on the permit, I'm just looking for, you know, there's a difference between, as the select board can tell you, what someone can or can't do and the ability to get onto the property to see whether they're not doing it.
But I think
So-
the point is that we
Yes.
would be agreeable
Okay.
to some sort of
So-
condition like that, 'cause it's.
You'd wanna limit that to the condominium common areas and not somebody's personal house though.
Right, and the way I envision is just the designated open space, not, you know, the entire development. For the,
when that part was developed, I think what was envisioned was the same monitoring that happened on the other easements in town. And that there would be some charge for it, that it wouldn't be a big burden on the town to pay for that to happen.
does the town charge anyone currently?
To my knowledge, no.
Okay, so I think having guaranteed access allows them to do that, and they can do it more or less, however much they do for others.
Yeah.
Alright. On the condo docs piece, we mentioned that one, the condo docs would have to be submitted for town review and then recorded. But in terms of upfront having conditions for certain requirements, the requirement to maintain open space, including at least annual mowing of the designated open space area. Requirement to maintain the infiltration basins, that's the other one we talked about a week ago.
Mr. Chair, I have one question. I
Yes.
feel like a week ago, we discussed mowing or haying, I think was an opportunity.
You do have to mow to hay.
No, I understand, but I wanna
Yes.
make sure that we don't overly limit the verbiage.
And that's part of why I appreciate that, part of why I'm reading these, if we wanna modify anything before we end up reading off an emotional list of conditions. The way I was envisioning the infiltration basins, because we don't know what the future will change, you do have that, sorry, long day, manual, for lack of a better word, but I think we could say to maintain the infiltration basins in accordance with recognized best practices that work on your ends, we're not
Yeah, you can even say current best practices, that way
With-
it's evolving.
current best practices. That works. One that I mentioned, I don't know that we would, the condo docs would need it, but open to thoughts is whether or not we need to have them specify that if an owner comes in and wants to use commercial 2 and commercial 3 for a combined commercial use, does the condo docs need to specify that that's an option as opposed to, is that just always how that piece of condo law works? And I don't know the answer to that.
You can put it
Well, you
in.
can always combine.
Yeah, I think we can put it in, but I also don't think it's strictly necessary, because you certainly see in strip centers, et cetera, where you might start with one and expand your business to 2 or 3. Then it's sort of an understanding with the landlord or the owner, how they wanna use that space and what they wanna do for fit out inside.
So under this piece, the 6.4 on the preserving the open space, it refers to legal instruments to preserve that open space in perpetuity, being submitted for town review and then recorded before site work begins. One thing I'm kind of open to is also requiring in the condo docs that when they deed out condo units, the condo deeds must include language reciting that open space requirement, so that all buyers are on notice that that area needs to be preserved, and that's sort of front and center.
Yeah.
Attorney Lane, thoughts on?
My thought is that if you were to sell a condominium unit as part of a master deeded community, you would certainly have reference to the fact that it was created by the condo docs, and that all rules, regulations, restrictions, et cetera, subject to your.
Yeah, I know how those end up. I'm more at sort of what we deal with
People
like
being
class
guided
6
to
roads,
it.
where even though the requirements in place for building in class 6 don't change, they still end up requiring these waivers so that people are on notice. Well, they're working on, but the point being, your average buyer, they are certainly on notice by the deed instrument, but whether it is important enough to call it out in the deed so that they know, right, it's including that open space. So I don't have a strong opinion, but I could see the value of
I
that.
think we'd be probably happy to bounce a draft deed off town council. Right.
Alright, so what I'll do maybe is,
You don't normally see it specified that clearly, because normally that's in the restrictions, covenant, rules, regulations,
Should the
restrictions.
banks look at that in?
Yeah, it's subject to those things anyway.
You'd see it through a title run.
Right, you'd see it
So-
through the title.
maybe where I'll leave it is, we don't have to require that as a condition, but please consider it, and when you are drafting the condo docs and you submit them, that
Yeah.
it's not an issue.
I wanna add something to that, in the same vein. We talked some months ago about disclosing the fact that there's a shooting range across the road in one of those documents. And it's been a long time, but the owner of, or the executive director or whatever, came before us and wanted to make its existence really clear to who the buyers of this. So please put that in whatever document you think is appropriate.
Right, that would be like in the public offering statement maybe, or.
Right.
Or
disclosures.
approval versus.
Josh, is there something you're specifically looking in terms of a condition for our approval, or just sort of like the last one where we're just sort of telling them like, keep it?
No, I don't
your
think it's
best,
a condition of approval, but I'm hoping that
Okay.
that'll be in the deeds or the condo documents or something, so that someone can't come back later and complain.
Yeah, I think it could probably be
Okay.
a recital in the condominium documents, and that's something for people on notice immediately. That's a recorded document, and that's part of being good neighbors to the existing gun club.
Yep.
Alright, so I guess then the 4 that I have still, and I'll bring it back to make sure we didn't lose it, but that the condo docs must include that requirement to maintain the open space, including at least annual mowing or haying. The requirement to maintain infiltration basins in accordance with current best practices. The requirement to maintain existing tree buffer along the commercial access road, except as necessary to develop commercial 2 and 3, is that the right way to phrase that?
Writing down what you were
Oh,
saying.
no, we're gonna
Yeah.
come back and have these, this is more just
Yeah.
initial, so the third one, requirement to maintain existing tree buffer along the commercial access road, except as necessary to improve.
Yeah, you can
And
even,
maintain that road.
You can even call out the disturbance limits on the plan.
And then,
Talked about using the word continuous for that visual barrier, I think. There's a visual barrier.
existing continuous tree
I'm
buffer.
not sure it's totally continuous now.
Alright, so we'll say the existing tree buffer, so in other words, they're not taking down, I think that's the understanding, they're not taking down any more trees than are necessary just to upgrade that road.
One question on that, just as sort of a point of clarity, is that for that back commercial space, part of the viability is, and the desirability of it is the visibility from the road.
I think we're talking.
I guess
Yeah, I'm not talking about
20, 100 feet.
the, sort of the,
I think what Eli's doing is putting his lawyer hat on and wants to be specific to
Yes.
the location of where that's occurring.
so I said along, and I'm calling it the commercial access road, but the access road, and I am not referring to the specific areas that are going to be the limited common area that is commercial 2 and commercial 3.
Okay, yeah, I think
So,
Cause the marketability of that is the highway,
right,
so you don't want.
so they can, I think, do what they want on commercial 2 and commercial 3 as I understand it, but that, you know, the rest of the road, which also goes in front of the majority of,
I thought the intent of the board was to have a barrier so that it wasn't visible from
What?
93.
I think it's partially visible now, and the issue is, you know, as opposed to taking it all down versus leaving up that line of red pines. Maybe it would be helpful, seeing if I'm looking at sheet 4, that 50-foot, if I'm looking at commercial 2, right below commercial 2,
Yes.
there's a 50-foot marker, but it's not clear that that's road versus part of, it just says building setback. Is that 50-foot part
That's the
of
50-foot
commercial
building-
2
that's the
or part
building
of,
setback.
but is that part of the proposed commercial 2 lot?
Yes.
Or part of?
Yeah, so the
okay.
commercial 2 lot actually goes out and touches the state right away. So one of its boundaries is the state
I
right
see.
away.
Like for the storage units, at exit 18, we specified they maintain the barrier between the highway and the storage units. Not
So-
that that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can leave part of that off for
Would
site,
you mind if I
Yeah.
interject a little bit? I think you wanna be careful not to create obstacles that prevent the marketing of those units, and you guys have another, I'll say, bite at the apple at the site plan time. So my preference would be to ask that you not go so far as to require a tree buffer in front of those units. The roadway, I get, I understand, and I think continuous is good, but within reason, like sometimes you don't wanna plant just a row of trees, cause it doesn't look natural. So you might clump them, but the idea is to create a visual.
yeah, I think we're
I think-
going in the same direction, which is the road is the access. Depending on the commercial use and in site plan review, there may be a need for more or less
Yeah,
visibility.
add that,
Right.
that gives us an opportunity to market, and then you guys to weigh in on like an actual landscape plan, which I would, if you don't consider them, I'd recommend them at the time of commercial site plan.
Yeah, is that,
Did we say that we will, do we want to specify that we can request it at that point?
I mean, it seems like we
I think we
have
have
the
a ri-
right to
We have in the
discuss
site
tree
plan
buffer
process, we have the right in the site plan.
in that stage of things, and perhaps the only concern now would be, don't go taking the trees down in the meantime,
And
but
some of those are within the, like, the trees that I think were all, half of the trees that we're referring to, cause half of them are on the other side of the access road, are within the open space lot. So those trees can't be taken down,
right, and we have a representation in the meeting that that's an issue for site plan review for whatever specific commercial use seeks to go there. Okay. I think that is all that I had, at least in going through the notes and the rest of the plan and the conditional use permit topics that we're allowed to consider. Are there other areas of this application that anyone else on the board has questions?
I have one.
Discuss, Josh?
I think the applicant in their fiscal analysis talked about houses, duplexes being, if my memory's correct, 489,000, and the single family either 600 or 650. I've forgotten 650,000 or 600,000. I've forgotten what the number was. And I also recollect from last week that the footprint of these are 2,000 square feet, I think, for the single family houses. And if it's a 2-story building, that's a 4,000 square foot house. And I want to know if my calculation is accurate, but assuming it is, that sounds like, a really big house on really small lots. And given the cost that you're anticipating, that belies to some degree your stated intent at the outset of this whole thing to make sure that there's housing for police and firefighters and teachers. And I'm not sure I can't quite square the intent of that with both the size, if I'm projecting them right, the size of these units and the cost of them. These seem like, McMansions on tiny lots. And I'm hoping you can address that and tell me where I'm wrong.
Yes, I guess you asked if you're interpreting that correctly, and respectfully, no, it's that the buildable box area is that 40 by 50 for the 2,000 square foot area. That's just the vanilla box inside setbacks as proposed. We're not building to the edges of those. The proposed house footprint size, you've discussed a range of sizes. 1,500 to 1,700 square feet building.
Which would be
Both.
either ranch or 2 stories,
Right.
so it might be half that on 1 story.
Right.
And I don't anticipate any houses here that would get to 4,000 square feet.
No, and again,
Of living
part of that
space.
is what the market will bear, the point of, if you're gonna build a mansion or a McMansion, you're probably doing it on a larger acreage tract than it'd be out of place in what we're proposing here. So that's not the intention at all, is to build to the edge of what could conceivably be built.
And what about the cost?
About the range that was in the fiscal impact study, I think we probably confused you, but that range is still the expected range.
Which is 500 to 700?
Call it high 4s to low to mid 6s, depending on size, of course, and market. The market could turn tomorrow and the prices could be very low or much lower. But right now, that's what we're thinking.
Houses are just so expensive everywhere now.
Yeah, I think the average house in the state now is over $500,000.
520.
Yeah,
Hey, Josh, you remember that 2-lot subdivision on Northwest Road we did a couple months ago?
Yes.
I think they finished the renovations and relisted the house, the existing house, separate from the lot they'd subdivided at the purchase price. So it's 600,000 for sale. We'll see if it actually sells, but for a 1,700 square foot residence in Canterbury. Some things are hard to believe.
I mean, the house on Asby Road that they just built
Alright.
this past summer went for almost $900,000.
So, keeping focused on sort of this, are there any other conditions for an approval that anyone on the board wants to talk about or propose?
questions, but I have comments.
By all means.
So throughout this whole process, I have been hoping to see something that addresses what I think is a fundamental deficiency to this entire plan. And that is that we are diminishing our commercial tax base. Everything from the phasing to the absolute maximum development of residential to the bare minimum development of commercial in a commercial zone. I think it goes against the spirit of mixed use, and I think it undermines the master plan.
Thank you, Megan, that actually flagged, I did have one in here that I missed. In the notes, what is it, sheet 8, you have the phase 2A and 2B. But it sounds like from when we were discussing it earlier and at the end of last time that really most of the prep work for what you're listing is 2A is something that can be done concurrently with.
That'd be done with phase 1.
Right, so would you be willing to just change that phasing to say that phase 1 is sort of that prep work for the commercial lot and the residential unit, so it's all concurrent. And then phase 2 is when you're expanding the road and doing the 2 back commercial lots.
Yes, I broke it up into 2A and 2B, just so that way, like, the front commercial could be developed. I can't remember if I included the prep work in the verbiage of that, but I can include the prep work in the verbiage for the front lot.
You know, I think if you manage to sell it and someone wants to come in, I don't think they should be limited by, you know, the phasing, they can't start
Yes.
that front lot. Fair?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Megan, any other additions to that or different issues you want to discuss?
I guess, is there anything else that you'd be willing to consider to address that concern?
I guess I would ask what you have in mind.
I'm not the applicant.
And the board has suggested numerous different possibilities.
Yeah, I guess I sit here quietly because I don't know how to directly address your concern more than what we tried to address it and
Develop the commercial first.
So,
recognizing that you want that,
So, but, yes, first suggestion.
Well, there were numerous proposals that we did offer without, you know, Megan says we're not the developer, but we did offer some things.
I'm not saying, and
So, I mean, in terms of, you know, a limited number of builds and one commercial property, move on to the next section and do another commercial property or something like that, or we also were talking about flip-flopping. So that the marketability of the commercial is up in front and it's less of an impact or a detriment to the neighborhood, but the neighborhood, your the housing development in the back. That was something that was
I
offered.
understand that all that's been said, and
Well, I mean, you're kind of pushing back on Megan and,
I wasn't
Well, I
directly
guess-
pushing back, I was recognizing that she has that concern and saying that
okay,
I can't meet her concern where she would like us to meet us at.
And I
So-
apologize, I wasn't intending to push back, it's more that we've heard a lot and we've incorporated what we can to make it work. I can't think of anything more to offer, and the things that you proposed, we can't make work. And make the project financially viable at this time. It would be different.
Why can't the phasing idea work?
I'm
You
sorry.
know, well, the phasing idea, I think that Rich mentioned, you know, where you build a certain number of residentials and then, you know, simultaneously before or after whatever the commercial is established, and then before the next batch of residentials, the next commercial. Why doesn't that sort of phasing work?
I think I can answer this. And I think like the problem that everyone keeps getting stuck on is develop the commercial, develop the commercial, develop the commercial, which I don't disagree with, it's the commercial zone, let's develop the commercial. But I think everyone's kind of missing the fact that these guys are confident they can sell houses and they don't have a buyer sitting here waiting to buy the commercial plots.
Then it's
Is that-
not a mixed use development.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, spot on, and but on top of that, we wanna move through it, sell it all, we're motivated to do so. And it's sort of like what comes first, right? Do the customers come first, or does the commercial? You
They're
you
both
want the
customers.
customers to come first, and then the commercial will be a result of the customers.
Yeah,
the spirit.
you're gonna get
hold on,
commercial
hold on.
uses
We'll
or
try to
related
keep that
to,
crosstalk.
yeah, because there's people there that will buy things from the commercial
Yeah,
location.
and it's
This makes
easier,
sense.
easier to attract commercial clients when you know you've got customers, so that, we want the same things, we just, we wanna do them in a way that makes economic sense for the project to get complete. The last thing any of us want is to not see the project finished. And we believe from experience, this is the best way we can guarantee the whole project gets finished. And we have made some compromise, like we're gonna prep that phase A pad, which I think is going to be, I don't wanna say an easy commercial client to attract, but it's certainly gonna be easier than the back, that's gonna take a bigger client.
And I
I'm
don't,
not sure I believe that the 100 people.
Hold on, Josh, just hold on,
Yeah,
Megan's
pardon me.
disagree with your assessment, Logan, or this, what I'm saying is that the way I'm sitting here and trying to interpret this, that's my role, is that I think that goes against the spirit of why mixed use was written, how it was written, what was intended behind it. So the assessment of what they're doing, I understand, I'm saying I don't think that is the
It
intent.
may be a fundamental flaw with the mixed use
hold on, Logan.
concept, honestly.
Yes.
Alright, Josh,
If there's, if this, if all the residentials are built, that's like 100 people, or roughly, if there's 3 or 4 people per unit. And I'm not sure I believe that the presence of 100 people is going to change significantly a commercial developer's assessment of the viability of of whatever type of commercial use, was a Dunkin' Donuts or a storage unit. I don't think 100 people is that big a difference. So, you know, the build it and they'll come argument that you make is, I don't know, I don't quite buy it. And I'm concerned, like Megan said, that, you know, really we're just approving a residential use in a commercial zone, and it'll go another 40 years before we get any commercials. And unless there's, you know, I don't care what kind of assurance, but some assurance that there's gonna be a commercial owner there, and I still can't find it.
I was gonna do one thing, and I wanna loop in Matt, cause I also saw you yawn, and I don't wanna have to keep you any longer, so, Scott, as a select board works more closely with the assessors, but my understanding is, once this subdivision goes through with this conditional use permit, there's going to then be 3 commercial lots as opposed to 1. They're taxed at the highest and best use, and there's no income approach where they can sort of get away from that, and so there is tax revenue that comes in from those lots that is itself also an incentive for them to find an owner, someone who's making money that can be used to pay those.
I heard that argument, and I don't know if that that seems backward to me, because if there's no building, if there's just a spot that's designated a commercial zone, that doesn't increase the assessment until there's, you know, more property and more improvements installed. So I'm not sure I really believe that tax thing. I don't know the answer, but it doesn't sound right to me.
Yeah, well, what I mean, my experience with tax cards, there's a land valuation, and the standalone lot valuation is like the highest portion there as opposed to back acreage. So having 3 sellable lots is worth a lot more than 1. If a building gets added, the building has its own taxable value, but the property, the fact that it is now a subdivided standalone lot that is in the commercial zone, has a higher value, and there would be 3 of them. But either way,
Yeah, so I'm gonna make an assumption based off,
Yeah.
like, kind of piggybacking on that, so you have one commercial lot that gets taxed at today, you're gonna end up with three that is, you can assume would be even if they're taxed the same, you essentially triple the tax revenue, which is what you're saying is the incentive to get rid of the lots by either selling them to a commercial user or actually developing them.
So-
Chair,
Without,
but in doing so, we are eliminating the possibility for how many commercial lots?
well, we can't control the possibility of what someone else could do, we have the application of what they're seeking to do now. Can we, it can be both, but I'd say one more piece on this, and then I would like to loop in Matt to see if he has
Sure.
any other things on this based on his review.
I keep hearing that we're not providing any commercial, and I think the fact is we are creating two more, three commercial lots. And I don't know how a municipality can require the building of something, right? We're asking for lots, we're asking for approvals for lots. The building takes place once somebody who, we're not gonna build them, I don't think you're gonna build them. The lot gets sold and somebody comes back to you, but you are creating the opportunity for that.
I just wanted to add a couple final thoughts about, in terms of the spirit of mixed use, et cetera, that we came before this board for our preliminary discussions and vested under the prior ordinance provision that didn't have that 50-50 commercial versus residential piece. I understand that certainly many of you are, I guess to say disappointed we're not under that framework or appreciate that that is now in here. But the reality is that the law protects us under what we're under now. And in terms of mixed use and the master plan, both of which are important on this, housing was the number one goal in the master plan. So I understand that this is a reduction of something that could have been 35 full acres.
We've heard this piece, I think we respond a lot, and I don't wanna, well, I think you're inviting a response from other board members that is going to loop us again. I don't think that we need to go through that again. I would like to hear from Matt if possible, and then open up public comment, and then see if there's any other board questions before we go to deliberation, if that makes sense. So Matt, thank you for your review and for making it this week.
Yeah, so sorry I was late, I was in Boston. Anyway, I've heard there's been talk about site prep. Could you just explain that more? I think I see both sides of it, right? Like on the one hand, the town, by having an innovative ordinance to allow for mixed use, they want the mix to be the end result, as do you guys as developers. And I think the question is, and I know Joshua mentioned it, how many years might it go before it happens? It is driven by the market, and looking at the location along 93 for commercial 2 and commercial 3, that could, just tell me more about the site prep for that. How far would you go with that to try and entice a commercial buyer?
So when it comes to the site prep, it's preparing that front pad, so leveling it off, which is generally level now, but there is a tree line along the front there, which would be cleared to give the visibility of the lot. It's stubbing a stormwater pipe to it, so that way the stormwater that the lot generates when it's constructed can flow to the master basin, which is sized appropriately for 70% impervious coverages over that lot.
You're talking about the north lot, I think Matt's asking about the south too.
Yeah, these
Two
and 3.
I guess, no commercial, no prep would occur on that lot, other than during our AOT permit, we are grouping it, we are, permitting that for an impervious coverage of 75%, so that way the next buyer of it doesn't need to go through an AOT permit if they are under that 75% threshold. I wouldn't wanna do any actual disturbance to it, since it's already in the configuration of what I would propose a prepped path to be.
And
Accessibility up there's already a gravel road there.
right.
We can improve that with more gravel, just to let them know.
I guess what I'm thinking of is to try and split the difference here, right? You know, the more appealing it is, the more quote site ready, the more likely you're gonna have somebody come in.
Right, but
So
also
I
you have
guess-
the activity in the front, then it's gonna draw people to look at it,
It's more, I
cause you can
mean,
get to it, you know?
you could also argue too, that if somebody buys a $600,000 house, they're not gonna wanna see commercial go up right next to it too.
That's part of it, but that'd be an
I
agreement.
get
It'd be
that,
addressed.
and I would say definitely throw that in the documentation so that they know.
Yeah.
So when they're at the
Yeah.
future planning board meeting, they can mention it. I guess, and knowing you guys are gonna come in for, or the future buyer would be coming in for 3 site plans essentially. Maybe the question is, it becomes more appealing, which means it could develop faster, depending on how far down the road you go with that site prep, right? And I don't know what that answer is, but
Yeah.
that could be a way to do that. I mean, I understand the argument of having the residential first, we all know the market's crazy, that gives you capital or, you know, whatever to facilitate the back end commercial, but I think there could be something with the site prep to see how far you go, because when a potential buyer
This
looks
site
at
doesn't
it.
have ledge, it's already flat, there's really nothing to do to
Okay.
get that going, you know, you just strip the loam and you're basically there.
Okay, and as far as the AOT stuff, how far would you, like, what's
That
your?
would be permanent.
I know that's
So-
permanent, but I guess what I'm curious about is, like, what, how site ready is site ready for this review?
So when it comes to.
Knowing you gotta come back for site plan, and you guys can't control the future site plan review.
Yeah, so when it, ready
Put a
for,
bigger
ready
fish
for AOT is, there's a basin that's sized appropriately that can, control stormwater for 75% impervious coverages, which is a pretty substantial impervious coverage over a lot there. And that gets you through that permitting process, which can be long, and then it's up to the town here that will dictate how long it takes them to permit the site plan. I don't wanna say the county and the applicant.
So could you say then that you'd be helping cut a future site plans AOT process down?
We're helping cut that cost down, and we're also helping cutting that time down. And it's one permit that they know, so if they do a concept and they see that they're at 70% impervious coverages, they're here, they just go into the town and they show that, and they're this one permit and probably a septic permit, and they're ready to go. They don't have to go through that other state permit.
Right, you've got the septic, you've already done your sizing on that, and.
Yeah. So that's where, like, while it's not on the ground preparations for it, it's paperwork preparations, which sometimes can be.
Which can be 6 figures, so.
Yes, and it can be grueling, and it can,
And
and time is money,
Right.
so.
I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I think if the phasing is gonna be a challenge, I think the site prep and seeing how far you can go to put the bigger worm on the fish hook, that could be a way to do that. I mean, you've got 2 lots right along 93.
And that's the marketability, like the visibility of that is really the key to get.
And the discussion about the buffer earlier, you
I
know,
think
that's.
you might have to take stuff down, not, you know, if it's allowed by the state, just to open it up selectively.
Yeah, I mean, you guys can, I don't know, like.
It's the state, I don't know if they'll let you, huh?
Yeah, I know, one of my other towns, we got signage issues we're dealing with DOT. But I mean, were you gonna put, like, I'm assuming you would, you know, put some signage right there, you know, lot for sale, and the more you could
Yeah.
say.
But you can't
Under-
market it until it's approved, you know, you can't say.
Oh, yeah, I get that,
That's
but
the
I
other
guess,
hurdle.
but I guess what I'm saying is you can get a bigger worm on that hook, the more that, you know, that the engineering, anything you can do
Right.
on the AOT, to chip away, roughen in the road, I mean, those kinds of things. That could be an alternative, I guess, those are phases.
You can gravel that road further. So it just
Yeah.
needs to be paved at that point.
I
Then
mean,
you gotta
just
maintain.
as a comparison, right, take brownfields for example, totally different subject. You know, there are developers that will look for brownfield sites because they've gone through a process where it may be already capped, for example, and that's their parking, right? It ties down the cost of construction, which makes it more appealing, so that could be what the site prep does as a way to get there.
Is there any of that you're willing to agree to? What is the maximum you'll go to prep that back lot?
That site's really, it's flat, it's level, there's
I guess I
really
wanna say,
nothing
it's
to do with
it's in the
it.
condition that I would leave it in if I was
Yeah.
prepping a pad mod.
But if I was understanding, so, and I agree too in terms of prepping and stabilizing, but, I think I heard in that back and forth, that you might be willing to agree that part of what we're asking in terms of prepping commercial one is that you would also just gravel in the road, so it is a little bit further along, so that they may still have to do more improvements to the road, but it is not in the less passable
Should make it easier.
Woods Road
to
form.
shovel it.
I think you've got access to gravel.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could gravel a road. I typically would have said that, that cost associated to that site, the person developing that site plan is probably pretty minimal, but if it gets us closer to
And
this.
still leaving, those other ones undisturbed, which also makes sense, and then anything that they're doing is appropriate to whatever use they're putting on.
So we'll gravel till where it opens up and then.
Yeah, to the point that would connect to commercial two, basically.
Can we locate that?
I think it would it be,
It's pretty much the roadway, and I can probably say station, so at the end of phase one to station 1900, which is here, right?
which sheet, Sam?
It's P1, it's a profile.
SD.
Cause it's essentially graveling 900 feet of roadway.
Okay.
Oh, I think I might be timing out of this call. Is that possible? That's true?
Is it saying,
I got this notification, but it disappeared before I could read it, and I keep on getting a ding. So I don't know. So I don't know too much about this.
this meeting shouldn't have a limit on
Oh, okay, all right.
how long it is. If you get disconnected though,
I'll
try to reconnect right away.
what's your cell number in case I get disconnected?
401.
It's on the record.
Bless you.
Pardon me?
401.
Not the first one of our cell phones on the record.
Yeah,
662
Take down.
1641.
1641, okay. And I know someone else's number in the room too, so, okay. Sorry to interrupt.
Alright,
Always with my parents.
they will, Matt, anything else? Otherwise, I'll move to public comment.
No, I mean, just, the further you get it, I mean, the ideal, and again, this is not feasible, but like, like an economic development strategy in some towns is pre-approved site plans, right? Here's the universal uses, it's pre-approved, you buy it, you're ready to go, there's no permitting, you just build. Obviously, that's not plausible here.
We just don't know what that's gonna be.
Exactly, so, but the further along the process you get, the more likely you are to sell it, because you're saving that money on that back end, and maybe that can be with the house being.
I'd say it's shovel ready except for permit.
Yeah, as far as you
It's
get
town
that way.
permitting, it's state
that's-
permitting ready, it just
Yeah.
needs to.
And to Brendan, to your point about the tax card changing, that is my understanding too, the land value will change with the new designation. And then the building is what brings it higher, but yeah, the further you can get it, the better, you can't do this.
I see. Anyone in the public have any comments? We'll start with Lisa. Can you just state your name and address for Cal?
Lisa Carlson, Morrill Road, Canterbury. I'm a consumer. I've got my consumer hat on now, folks, as I'm talking to you and asking questions. I'm going to buy one of your houses. Or I might be one of your commercial developers. How long, soup to nuts, if you could start tomorrow, is the land prepping gonna take? Or the building of homes? So if I wanna buy a house in this cluster, in this development, how long is it going to be before 24 units and one duplex are completed?
We've missed our
When
good,
is my neighborhood gonna be done?
we missed our good building window, so we'd be starting in the spring. And then you,
Yes, like AG approval.
and then, assuming you start in the spring, you're probably 3 months of site work, given how it's a pretty easy site. And then you can kind of start putting up houses after that. And what's your house time? Probably 4 to 7 months, yeah. So 6 months from the start of the project.
Okay,
Would be the first house.
okay, phasing concerns me greatly because I don't wanna build a house and move in and live there and for the next however long, many months or years, listen to construction while I'm trying to live there. So my concern in planning about living there or having a business there is that this gets done pretty darn quick and not over a period of years dragged out because there aren't businesses that have been pursued to go in there, so we know what's gonna be there and who my neighbors are gonna be, even commercially, even though I know I'm buying in to a property that has a gun club nearby and it's a commercial business zone, so there will be businesses there. I wanna know that I'm not gonna be listening to diggers for years and years and years. So I think that's not a good idea. Just saying as a consumer, just as a neighbor, as a person that might be living there.
Thank you. Beth?
My question might follow with Lisa's. I was unsure, and I just like to be made clear. Originally, I thought all the units were going to be built at once at the builder's discretion to design and then sold. But it sounds like the lots will be sold and then built to spec.
Last week, that's what we were able to clarify, is that they will sell the lots and have a number of home designs that a buyer can pick from, basically, and then they are built to spec for that buyer.
And then last week was the first time that came up, yes.
Yes.
Okay, just wanna make sure, but the other thing is, and I guess to follow on with Lisa's, so all the lots will go for sale, and then each house will only be built when somebody has chosen a lot and chosen their design correctly.
I think that's my understanding of both the commercial and the residential, that they're all able to be marketed immediately on approval.
So the entirety of the residential will be not complete until the lots are sold. As people come, okay, thank you, I just wanted to be clear on that.
Alright. Calvin?
Yeah, I had to run out last meeting, so maybe I'm being redundant, but with the building cap and the allowed permits, I think the town, based on our houses right now and the cap, I think you'd only be permitted to have 8 1/4 houses per year. I don't know if that got addressed with the phasing, or was there a way to circumvent that, or?
What the applicant told us is they're aware of the building cap and they'll, comply with our ordinances and they'll, follow that process, so that's sort of between them and the select board in turn.
Well, I just remember last time you were throwing out 8 or 9 houses per phase, and that just happened to correlate with the amount of permitting they could get, and I just wasn't sure if that conversation had
Yeah, I don't,
expanded.
I don't think it got to the point where the planning board was looking at any condition other than, obviously, you have to follow all state and federal laws and all local ordinances, and that includes the building permit. Was your hand earlier was
Yeah, I just
responding?
think it's pretty important to mention that, we're not presenting a site plan, and the fact that it's a subdivision plan and the house lots can be looked at the same as the commercial lots, as they're all for sale at the same time. So there really isn't a phasing factor into this project. Everything goes for sale at the same time once it passes AG approval. So I just think that's important to mention. It's a subdivision, not a site plan, and anything can be built, like we're not proposing a specific house or a specific commercial.
everything's a for sale lot.
Thank you.
So then what is the point of phasing?
Well, to your point, Ray, I think we've almost eliminated the point of phasing to the extent that if they're gonna gravel in the roadway, the only difference is once there's a sale of commercial 2 and 3, they would need to do, you know, whatever site-specific work, they would need to do any upgrades. There was, a note, and I'm maybe not gonna find it, but even under the existing notes, while they proposed phasing, where is it? Phase 2, I'm on, sorry, sheet 8. Phase 2A or 2B can occur in any order after phase 1 is constructed or concurrently with phase 1, so that there is no holdup. If they find a buyer, they do not have to wait for the finish of all those residential units.
The phases are kind of imaginary.
Yes, but where we landed, which I think is helpful, is that the applicant is agreeing here today that they will start as part of this initial process, the prep work for commercial 1 and graveling in the road, which will ideally help encourage, you know, a faster sale of those commercial units while they are also working on the marketing, selling and building the residential units. Is that my understanding correct?
Yeah, that's fair.
It seems like if anything, the phasing is going to be created by the building cap, the permit cap.
Yeah, to the extent there's any limit in a particular year, probably. Okay.
That's what's gonna create sort of any kind of
think the phasing-
artificial delay.
Before I leave this one piece, Nicola, right?
Nicola, yeah.
Nicolo, sorry. Do you get his name for the minutes?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, sorry about that.
Yeah.
And is public comment still open?
I think after that, I'm gonna see if the response, then we're gonna close the public comment.
Cause I would like to make a comment.
Then yes.
Okay.
I think the phasing in regards to, was the premise with the commercial development where they're doing just the houses.
I know,
You know, my biggest fear is that they're gonna walk away after they've done 26 houses and leave everything fallow.
yeah.
So the
I- I-
phasing was
I
a
understand.
negotiation to get both pieces done.
Yes,
Okay.
I understand
Okay.
that that's what some people wanted, and I think that we've concluded that that's not something that we can feasibly ask. That's my understanding of where we've landed. We can't force them to hold up houses to find a commercial buyer. I
Right.
don't think we have the power to do
But
that.
getting the agreements to do that prep work helps ensure
Yeah.
that when there's a buyer, it's
Oh, I
going
think that's a
faster,
great
it's
idea.
more marketable.
Yeah, I'm
All right.
not disagreeing about that.
Cal, last one for public comment and then we'll move that on.
I'm Cal McKay of Baptist Road, and I would like to speak in favor of the application before the board as a resident, not as administrative assistant. I've been watching these meetings for a year and attending all of them since May. Everyone involved has done a tremendous amount of work to meet in the middle and find a satisfactory way to move forward. I've never before been on the side of developers and capitalists, but in this case, I feel strongly enough about the issue to speak up. At this point, everything in their proposal is legal and meets the requirements of the 2024 zoning ordinance. I understand that the ordinance has since changed, but they are within their rights to use the old one, so their application should be judged by those standards. I believe at this point, denying the application outright would be unreasonable and place the town in a precarious position. You have dissected at length the hypothetical situations of undeveloped commercial property, undesirable new residents, everybody hosting Thanksgiving at once, overflowing schools, but you have not touched on the very real immediate consequences of a no vote. Not only would it show the people who voted for you that you are willing to bend the rules just to say no, it would put the town in legal jeopardy. You have noted that they bring lawyers with them to every meeting, so you probably realize that this means they will immediately sue if their proposal is refused. I'm not suggesting giving into pressure, but I am saying that you should think about if you have a real leg to stand on when you are in court explaining why you said no. Do you actually have a firm legal basis for preventing this property owner from using their land how they desire, or will you have to admit that your denial was just NIMBY? This application has already cost the town thousands of dollars in administrative work and legal fees. Going to court will only exacerbate that. So instead of a net gain to the town of $140,000 a year, the town will have to shell out thousands defending your decision and probably losing in court. We are a small town with a small budget, and $140,000 would make a huge difference. That could either pay for resources we desperately need or be used to reduce the tax rate by 38 cents. New buildings and new people make it possible for those who have lived here to afford their homes and stay in town. The applicant has jumped through many hoops and compromised in several places, maybe not as many as you wanted, but enough to bring the development into the legal and reasonable realm. If you don't like certain commercial uses, then you need to change the zoning ordinance to ban those uses going forward. If you don't like stormwater ponds being included in open space, then you need to change the zoning ordinance to ban that going forward. If you can't agree on on how to interpret critical aspects of the ordinance, then you need to change the zoning ordinance to be more clear going forward. I understand you're working with a large document that has been piecemeal together over decades. It's completely understandable that it has mistakes and areas that need to be improved, but it is not fair for two applicants for you to move the goalposts during the application. You need to acknowledge that the ordinance has mistakes, just take the loss and focus on fixing them for the future. Absolutely, you should place all of the reasonable conditions that you've discussed, but as a taxpayer and resident of this town, I encourage you to approve the proposal.
Thank you, Cal.
Thank you.
Clifton, any public comment? Any?
No.
Okay, then,
Thank you.
I totally agree with what Cal said.
thanks. Alright, public comment is closed. Are there any other questions from the board for the applicant before we move into the deliberative portion where it's just us? Okay. So, open at this point for deliberation, so any member of the board wants to get on the record about how they feel, conditions we have talked about. If I can go through that list at some point after that and we can talk, are there any we want to remove or that I overlooked? But happy to hear from everyone at this point. Oh, I thought Josh was raising his hand.
No, I did not raise my hand.
Alright,
Josh is tired.
yeah. So I'll sort of work my way around. Josh, do you have anything at this point that you wanna raise or flag or say to the board?
I think, reflecting on the comment I just heard from the member of the public, it is a leap of faith to believe that a commercial use will come around. And I think the incentive for the developer to actually attract one is not all that great. On the other side, I think they've probably done all they can do to make the various commercial sites attractive. But I still think there's a leap of faith, and that if we're wrong about that this becomes a residential zone in contravention to the explicit the zoning map. This is a commercial zone, and I find it difficult to weigh those two things. I just find that very difficult.
Thanks, Josh. I'm just gonna go around in line, so Greg?
Yeah, I have some comments. Joshua has described the CUP process as squishy. In some sense, that is correct. The applicant is granted total relief from dimensional standards, which are the heart of the ordinance for other subdivisions. Most significantly, there is no minimum lot size, no frontage or setback requirements. That's squishy. With no dimension requirements to ensure the intent of the ordinance, the CU process replaces the dimensional requirements with a very heavy burden of responsibility on each planning board member. The CUC process is not at all squishy about that responsibility. Each planning board member must decide if the subdivision meets the intent of the ordinance and the master plan. Most of us were here for the last 2 years when this ordinance and the master plan were conceived through listening and work sessions in our community. We know the intent of the ordinance and the master plan. The intent of the ordinance is to jumpstart commercial development by allowing a limited amount of modest residential and to help fill the need for modest living units. The applicant has pushed the advantages of dimensional relief far beyond the intention of the ordinance and of the master plan. The applicant has also rejected almost all requests to correct the balance, rejected all requests to correct the balance toward more commercial. A proposal that partially addresses one goal of the master plan, but is detrimental to many, many other goals of the master plan is not in compliance. I've discussed this with numerous constituents who supported the CUP ordinance and worked with the board developing our master plan. None of the ones I spoke to support the application. They expressed the same concerns expressed by the board: too much residential, not enough commercial, nothing affordable, nothing to promote community, and that undermines many of the goals of our master plan and the intent of the ordinance. Our vote on this will have a permanent impact on our community. Thank you.
Rich?
I think that, I understand that you're using the old ordinance. I know we updated it to make it 50-50, but this isn't even close to this. I see this as a residential development in a commercial zone. We have very limited commercial zone as a space in our commercial areas. Tried to come up with some creative ways to gain more. All we have is a plan for the residential use. I mean, even though the commercial areas are gonna be shovel ready, site ready, gravelled right to the front door, there's still no development, no commercial development. It's only residential. And it's not even close to 50-50, which we changed it to. It's not even close to, right now, it's all residential with zero commercial. I know what the intent was. I was here when we worked through this master plan. We've tried to negotiate different things. I'm not sure we got there. That's all.
Logan?
I think one of my concerns with this initially was that we were potentially setting precedent for future development, and I think one of the things that sort of changed my feelings on that is that we have in fact already changed the regulations relevant to this, and this is in fact probably the only thing that will go forth under the current version of the rules, or the then current, I somewhat agree with Cal in that I do not generally see myself as being kind of pro-development, but I also think that we are butting up against the limits of what we as the planning board have the ability to require of an applicant. We can't require them to find a commercial buyer before they build out the residential lots. I mean, they could find a commercial buyer tomorrow and that could be the first thing to hit the site. There's just no way to know. I would love to see a different plan. But this is the plan that we have in front of us. And if we have a plan in front of us that complies with the regulations as they existed when the plan was applied for, I don't know that we are in a position to try and shoehorn this into something else.
Thank you, Logan. Megan?
So I appreciate Cal's statement. I wanna clarify one thing. I'm very much not anti-housing. I'm very much not in my backyard. But I think that this isn't done well, if I'm being very honest about it. I also think that we on the board we have kind of a dual role here. We're a semi-judicial body, so we have we have obligations to follow the law and to make sure that the applicant is aligned with the law as it's written. Yes, seems that they are. The other part of that role is as representatives of the community and hearing the community and what they want. And I think that it is very fair and valid, especially under a conditional use permit, to ask for conditions, to push the applicant to consider if this is considering the intent of what we had written mixed use for. Was it written poorly? Yeah. I hope we change that. But like even more than just the 50%. But I just wanna be clear that my push and my questions and things like that come from one of the hats that I'm wearing here as a representative of the community and hearing what residents say and what they want, and that this is a commercial zone and everything that that has been said before. And also, there's the other role of judging this application based on the letter of the law under which it came to us. So that is my statement, that yeah, diminishing perception that it's a NIMBY thing. I'm working two positions here at the same time.
So for me, I certainly thank Cal for that statement, and I think that there's been a lot of frustrations on both sides of these tables. I've been here for the last year. I think I've made every meeting even before I was on the planning board. So, as I think Logan said, this is potentially a precedent-setting vote tonight, so very difficult decision, so.
Alright, so I'm gonna say a few things and I think we should walk through the conditional use permit criteria in here, and if there are specific ones that people have an issue with. Otherwise, we can take a motion and then have deliberation on specific conditions and that kind of piece, but like when I first ran for planning board, one of the things I said, which is easy to say, until you're faced with an application, is planning is this balance where you don't get, as a town, total authority to control how people develop their property, and you can't do it after you see what they're going to do. It has to be a prospective thing, which is incredibly difficult to figure out how to write an ordinance in advance that is going to make development occur the way you want to see it. And even then, we end up with a table of uses and look at how many different uses we allow. It's not a lot exists, it has to be A. It's you have all of these different options. And I know we've talked about it and there was a change in the ordinance, and that's not the piece that we're applying here. But I also want to point out and have people keep in mind, when we talk about valuable commercial real estate being used for residential uses, I lost my page. Single family residence is an allowable use as a matter of right in the entire commercial district. Residential use is not prohibited in the commercial district, right? It's allowed. And so the idea that just because this is residential should tip the scale. Now, I totally get, and I think it's fair, and I think we accounted for it in part when we talked about bonus density, that overall, the spirit of the ordinance was this area and getting a cluster subdivision in the commercial area should be more of a priority for commercial, but that's not how we wrote the ordinance. That's the change that was made. I think we've accounted for that when we had the applicant come back with a proposal that has no bonuses, in part, when we talked about that, because it's a primarily residential use. But that doesn't mean that overall the use can't or shouldn't be allowed. Part of the reason I tried to push and I tried to touch base with everyone the last two meetings is it's a conditional use permit, and we'll go through the high level pieces, but we all had sort of a fair shot to propose conditions to help lay out this development in advance. And I know it's important that everyone had that opportunity, and we can still talk about other conditions if we want. That list that I read, and if we get a motion, I'd like at the very least, whichever way it's going, to read in these conditions. I started duplicating numbers, but I think it's about 14 conditions, the majority of which I know we wanted maybe more in earlier meetings, or we asked about more, but the majority of them, when I went through them today, they agreed to make those changes, including ones that, while obviously not guaranteeing a particular use on a particular lot, are designed to ensure that those lots are marketable upfront, and that we get, a more streamlined process from here to eventual commercial development. One that I didn't mention, I think it's implied, but I guess we could add to that condo docs piece, which is the 3 things that we talk about as commercial use lots, that they have to be commercial use, that there is no ability to come in and use them for residential use if they have trouble down the line. I think it's sort of implied from the plan, so I don't even see that as something we have to ask for, but they're stuck with that, right? They have these lots, but there are 3 other commercial lots, more than they started with. They went from 2 to 3, that they're going to either be stuck with paying the town for those 3 lots and paying any condominium association fees, or they will find a buyer. And that's, I think, the most that we can do here with this particular application. So again, happy to talk about any other conditions, happy to talk about any particular provisions of the conditional use permit that any board member thinks are not being met. But these are all, as I see them, flexible conditions that I had us touch base on every single one, at least the last 2 meetings. So with that, I'm happy to hear from anyone on the board if they have other conditions they want to talk about, if they have specific concrete concerns with how this proposal violates a particular provision. And if not, I think we could move towards having a motion, at least for, deliberation on a particular motion with specific conditions listed. So I'll go, Josh, you wanna be first or last? I can go front to back.
Last.
Okay, I'll go the other direction, but give everyone an opportunity to flag if there's other conditions that they are considering, or if there's specific parts of the ordinance they believe are not being met. Scott?
No other conditions,
Alright.
I'm good.
Megan?
Can I ask one clarifying question of Matt before I do a condition?
Yeah, I think that's
It's
fine.
related to my
Sure.
condition. The AOT permit, I don't know about those. Were you implying that there's different levels to that? Like you can get a higher level one versus a real basic one? No, okay,
So
okay.
it's just
So
straight
we're-
conditional terrain.
Got it, okay.
The way that works on amending an AOT, so let's say you got a site plan, you do an AOT, usually like DES will, if it's dramatic, they'll make you amend it, but if not, it's all about, does the stormwater design control and manage the stormwater generated? And
But
that's
there
gonna-
isn't a level to which like they can get a basic one or they could get one that's really complete, right? I wasn't, cause I was trying to interpret with my limited knowledge what you were saying. Okay, then no.
Okay, and I'll add where was it? Sorry, someone it's near the button. We have, it's already on the plan, just to remind everyone, but maybe it's just page 1, lists all the state approvals.
On the cover.
Cover. Alright, well, I can't find it, but I have a note which is, all required state and federal approvals, including those listed on sheet 1. So it's wherever sheet 1 is, that's where it is. So they're already listed and they will be one of those conditions.
We've got our walking lanes as a condition.
Yes,
That was
What did
definitely.
you say?
the walking lane piece, and I had to cross
It's
it out,
not
but
a
we'll,
sidewalk, but it's something.
yes.
So, and I also want to say, it seems like my interpretation of what you're saying about the specifics on the commercial zone and the specifics on how these lots have to be used is that technically we've gone from having, or assuming that this were to go through, we've gone from having one lot that could actually be used residentially to now having several lots, 3 of which have to be used commercially.
Yes.
That may not be what people want, but it is something.
Yeah, I mean, I bet if you polled every person in this room, where we're gonna end up is not where any one individual person wanted at the outset.
Oh, no.
So,
First part of my comment is thank you for your remarks and your clarification. It helps settle some things in my brain. Under the conditional use permit, there's one glaring thing that after I just reviewed it real quickly, that we haven't mentioned it, is lighting. I don't recall anything
Glaring, very good.
how well lit or how unlit the development is gonna be, whether it's just gonna be passive with the houses, is there gonna be any additional streetlights, is there gonna be any, you know, we haven't
Sorry.
touched that.
yeah, so I think when I raised signs and lighting last time, I don't think we had any comment. The only part of signs I hit today, which they agreed to, was stop signs. I don't think we have lighting for anywhere else in Canterbury on the residential piece. Lighting and signs as it relates to the specific commercial uses is a core part of site plan review.
Right.
So if they require lights, we'll address it. We'll also address, you know, any potential impact of lights on commercial one, on the residences right behind them, that kind of thing.
It
But
doesn't-
happy to
There's
discuss
no
that.
plans for street lighting of any kind.
Question, there was mention of signage to market the commercial lot, like I assume sort of large billboard signage, do we need to do anything with that in terms of approvals?
I mean, to the extent it hits a sign ordinance, and I forget frankly whether we have a piece of the zoning ordinance that deals with it, that's something they can go to the Board of Selectmen for
That's not,
approval.
got it.
Not
There's
part of this
ordinance
thing.
that specifies something.
Yeah, I just meant in terms of the temporary, whether the temporary falls within that, but either way, becomes a Board of Selectmen issue.
I'm
In
not
terms
really-
of permanent signage related to like the commercial uses, I think that's within site plan review.
I'm not worried about signage at private ways. I mean, technically, the police aren't, it's not enforceable by the police anyways, even a stop sign on a private way. But I'm just curious about lighting, but I'll pass.
Alright,
Thank you.
Greg,
Oh, I've spoken before about the baseline density calculation. You know, in this claim, you know, it's, the baseline density dimensional standards are exactly the same as the baseline density, the density standards for any subdivision. We've had at least 10 subdivisions come through here since I've been here. And none of the presenters have said, oh, I can't understand this is too complicated. They just do it. So I think your baseline density is not in compliance with the ordinance. The ordinance says you have to do all the parts of it, you've said, we're only doing one. So that's what I think, so it's not in compliance with the letter of the ordinance in that issue. I also don't think it's in compliance with the spirit of the ordinance, and I think the CUP gives us, and the master plan, and the CUP gives us, the authority to regulate based on the intent of the ordinance and the master plan.
thank you, Greg. Josh?
I don't think I have any more comments on conditions.
Oh, I did have something on conditions.
Yes.
Yes, we brought up many conditions which are not on this list. The most important one, I thought, was to phase a certain number of a certain amount of commercial with a certain amount of residents. Once that's done, then you can do more residents. But that's been rejected, so I think that's, I vote for that kind of a condition.
I join Greg in that sort of condition, and I think we have the authority under the CUP to require some sort of phasing so that the gamble on getting commercial tilts more in the commercial favor.
Sorry, just give me a second. Alright, is there any opposition if I read out the conditions that we have on this list and we can tweak them as we go? And then I'd ask for discussion purposes, a motion and a second. At that point, anyone can, ask to amend the motion, add a condition, anything like that, and we can talk through it that way, but then we have a list of conditions on the table that we're discussing as we move towards a vote.
So what's the motion you need?
Well, so I'll read the conditions and then I'll ask for a motion to approve with those conditions, and it can be for discussion purposes, and then we will be able to add or subtract. The first is that all the conditions that we'll list out have to be added to the subdivision plan. It just ensures that they get recorded. The second is that legal instruments preserving designated open space in perpetuity must be submitted for town review and recorded before any site work begins. And that's through 6.4I, what is it, 2 and 3. The condominium documents have to be submitted for town review and recorded before any site work begins. The condominium documents must include the following requirement: that the association maintain the designated open space, including at least annual mowing or haying of the open space area. The owner association would be required to maintain the infiltration basins in accordance with current best practices. The association would be required to maintain the existing tree buffer along the commercial or the access road to commercial 2 and 3, except as necessary to improve and maintain that access road. Make sure I think I had one more on condo that got moved around. Give me 1 second. All right.
We were talking about visual barrier, not the existing row of trees, I thought.
Alright, I'll read through these and then we can discuss. So then, the commercial 1 site would be prepared and the gravel road to commercial 2 in phase 1. They're gonna strike general note 28. There will be stop signs at the 2 intersections between the residential loop and the access road. The residential loop will have how do I put this? We'll have a 4-foot marked walking designated area and be posted 20 miles per hour or lower. There will be a fence or other barrier put up between units 10, 11, 12, and commercial 2 and commercial 3 and their side and rear boundaries with the open space areas. Rocks or other physical barrier between the roadway and each of the 3 infiltration basins will be added. Sheet 8 will be amended so that what's listed as phase 2A will be changed to be concurrent with phase 1. Residential architecture must be Cape Colonial Ranch or New England farmhouse style. The town may enter on and inspect the designated open space area as reasonably necessary to determine compliance with the open space requirements. The applicant will add an easement to the plan for cistern expansion as may be necessary to enable commercial use of commercial one. And applicant will obtain all required state and federal approvals, including those listed on sheet one. It's the last one. All right. Cal, did you need me to change any of those, or you got those listed? Okay, so I'd ask for a motion to approve subject to all of those listed conditions, and then we can talk about the conditions, changing the language of any of them.
I'll make that.
I'll move that.
All right.
Or Joshua.
So Josh moved it, second,
Second.
all right. Open for discussion, so feel free to jump in, anyone.
Can I comment?
Sure.
I have two comments. One is the fence that you mentioned between the lots 10, 12 or whatever. I think we talked about those being walk-through fences so that there's a visual barrier, but it's not a physical barrier so that people can get to the open space. So I don't know how you want to word that. The second one is earlier on, I think it was your second condition where you included the words best practices. I'll give you a minute to find that. What I've seen in these words best practices, it sort of encourages regulatory creep. And I know this is far off the topic that we're on today, but best practices versus reasonable practices. And, a commission of somebody's put together the best practices and they tend to be really restrictive or a high bar. And I think it might be better to call reasonable practices rather than best practices.
Yeah, so Josh, I think the reason I wanted that is we had, I don't know that I have it in front of me. They had the manual, which was really detailed, and I didn't want our conditions to sort of limit the owners that if practices change, as opposed to saying you have to follow this exact document, that gives them more flexibility to ensure.
Yeah, I understand the purpose of the whatever the adjective is, practices, but there's been this, I don't know, I think this is just after seeing it over a number of years, best practices tends to edge toward a standard that maybe is too high because they're put together by people very concerned.
Yeah. Josh, would it work to add the word reasonable before the word current best practices?
That'd be great.
And on the one you mentioned about the
fences.
Fence, add a fence or other visual barrier. Would that work?
Sure.
Word visual, so it informs what we mean by
yeah.
Fence. We talked about a split rail.
Yeah.
How did you get that proposed change? Well,
when the applicant brought that up, you proposed the split rail fence with spaces in, so people could have access. You thought because it would look good, it would be a good match for your housing types. I mean, that seemed like a good thing. I mean, visual barrier to
yeah, visual barrier is maybe not the right word.
That's a lot more than a fence.
Which that's already on, the fence is already on the plans.
Separation.
Yeah, I meant more that it's something that you can physically see to understand that there is a change,
Delineate.
but not that it's preventing you from seeing.
Right.
And I
That's
think,
that's
okay,
why I
let's
brought
just,
it
we'll
up.
leave it at
How
fence.
physical delineation, right, because that's what you're.
Fence or
Well, you want to
other,
make sure people can walk through it.
You
But
said
they-
the split rails are specified on the plan.
Yes.
yeah, so,
Fences are specified on the plan.
problem solvers, all right.
Are they continuous or is there splits, is there openings in them?
There's openings.
Okay.
I have one.
Yeah.
There's a mention of that the setup for commercial pad 1 has to happen in phase 1, but I don't think there's any definition of what phase 1 is. temporally speaking, should we include such a thing, like either in terms of time frame or in relation to other aspects of this?
Yeah, I thought about it, I'm not sure what we could do, cause they get like a pretty long runway, just the way the statutes work in terms of once we grant an approval before they start, but they have represented in this meeting and their representations, you know, get worked into the approval and
I
their
think what they have
representation is.
represented is fine, my question is if we need to be more specific in our wording there, and I will take your judgment as a
Yeah, I
lawyery type person to.
if you have a suggestion for a change, but I take it as we have a
Yeah.
clear
Sure.
representation, yeah.
Quick thing, I mean, so they have phasing lines on their plans. I would just say in accordance with phasing as depicted on the plan or something.
Yeah, and and we already mentioned that the 2A piece is gonna be changed to be, it will be concurrent with phase 1, and I think that between that and their representations about what they'll do to help market those lots gets us there.
Can we jump back to fencing for a second?
Yes.
I have concern about vehicles driving into this undisturbed area.
So I submitted our intent for the condo docs, which had in the open space, motor vehicle access is prohibited, including but not limited to dirt bikes, ATVs, etc. The open space may be accessed for non-destructive outdoor activities.
Right, so which is good, but so 2 nights ago, I had to go unlock a gate because a hunter disobeyed the sign and drove down inside, and so people don't.
Yeah.
A physical barrier, you know, maybe more rocks along the side of between, separating the undisturbed space from the travel
So,
lanes.
Sam, if you can help us out, so we're talking along there, I think when I asked this last time, you pointed out that the trees are on both sides of the road to some portion.
Trees here, we just agreed to rocks along
Right.
here, we can extend it a little bit further if you want, and we can extend it a little bit further this way if that would.
But there would be, my understanding is some amount of those trees that are not going to be taken down, cause they don't need to be taken down for prep of the road.
If you're going down there, you might not be coming back.
Another good reason to have
Is that how that giant van got onto the property?
Yeah.
That's actually off the property.
Okay.
You're talking about the limo?
Yes.
So whether it's trees that obstruct the access or something else that obstructs vehicular access.
We can expand, we already put in the boulders, as one of the conditions, we can expand it to be the entirety of this way area.
Okay.
To separate the roadway from the undisturbed area.
Yeah, so that, the condition, Cal, that I said add rocks or other physical barrier between the roadway and the infiltration basins, say between the roadway and the designated open space area.
Infiltration basins and designated open space.
I can't imagine, given the topography, that you're gonna have a lot of issues with actual vehicles.
No, and
Dirt bikes, sure, but that's, you can't keep a dirt bike out with rocks, you have to keep a dirt bike out with threats.
A gun called.
so the condition is you must threaten dirt bike owners if they come onto the
I'm
property.
not gonna stipulate that they have to threaten the dirt bike owner,
Okay.
this is New Hampshire, that gets scary.
Alright. These are good. Any other suggestions or tweaks to any of the conditions? Rich? Greg, you have any more?
Let's talk about the barrier between 93 and this development. I thought we'd use in other, like at 106 storage unit and the storage unit exit 18, we use the language, I believe, continuous visual barrier of mixed woods.
Yeah, so what I kind of see is that came in as a site plan review, and that when we get a site plan review and we have now there's a particular commercial use that wants approval, that site is one of the things that we can address in that process. And so we have this condition in terms of not taking down any more trees other than what's necessary on that road, which will preserve that piece. And then there shouldn't be, anything happening on commercial 2 and commercial 3 until there is an owner who's come in for site plan review.
I talking about, I'm thinking about a longer term. You have a red pine blister thing coming through, but those trees are not gonna, those red pines won't be there.
Yeah,
I don't know that we can preemptively require them to put in future trees.
That's kind of where I land, and
It's landscape.
I do agree, you know, at some point, some of those trees come down. Hopefully, at some point, there are other trees growing up in that area because they are keeping that tree buffer area.
It depends on how it's managed. And what I'm suggesting is we encourage them to manage it, to maintain a visual wooded barrier.
I think the language that I read to Cal, and I'll just read back, see if that gets you, is required to maintain the existing tree buffer along the access road, except as necessary to improve and maintain that road, so maintain.
Okay, right.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. And I'm just, it's getting late and my brain is thinking, and I'm using this from experience, like at exit 18, where a for sale sign from the previous, when the property was being sold, is still up, violates our ordinance and everything. And I'm thinking out loud here, any signage advertising for sale or development, future development or whatever, be removed when that is sold or developed or.
Yeah, so I guess the way I see it is the sign ordinance exists and the selectmen get to enforce it, and so regardless of what we say, you know, they have to comply.
Well, there's a for sale sign on exit 18 behind the storage sheds.
So,
right now, and it's still up.
That seems not germane to this meeting.
right, but point being that to the extent it's an issue that the select board wants to deal with, I think that's fair game for them.
Okay. Well, I'm just wondering if it's something that we wanna put on a condition that housekeeping.
If we could add the word, you know, and the last one I think I wrote was all required state and federal approvals, we could change that to comply with all federal, state and local laws and regulations, including obtaining the approvals listed on sheet 1. Makes sense, and then we're looping in the local stuff as well.
I do have some generic notes in there that say to comply with all local ordinances, so it's kind of a catch-all, but.
Okay. Thank
I
you,
think
Sam.
that would go without saying.
It kinda does, but some municipalities.
I wasn't gonna look for it, there's a lot of notes.
It never hurts to say things an extra time.
Okay. If we're good on that, there's a motion, there's a second, we have proposed changes to those conditions. I think there was general agreement to all those, the changed language that we saw. Anyone disagree? So like we can say discussion on the motion as amended, as we just discussed, and then we can take a vote. Is there anything anyone wants to say before we take a vote? I'm gonna go left to right this time since I went back and forth. So starting with Josh, do you have anything else you wanna add, other than what we discussed? Greg?
I'm all set,
Nope.
thank you.
Rich?
No.
I do not. Logan? Megan? Scott? Okay. So, roll call vote. I'll start right going to left, and we have to do a roll call because Josh is remote.
Good
So-
idea anyway on this.
Good idea anyway. Are you in favor of the motion to approve subject to those listed conditions? So if you say aye, it's a vote to approve, nay, it's a vote not to approve. So starting with Scott.
Aye.
Megan.
Voting to approve the application.
Is that, was she a yes or no?
Be subject to all the conditions that we listed out.
Yes,
Aye.
Aye.
no, aye, sorry.
Aye.
I'm a nay.
And Josh?
No, aye.
Okay. Just like take that breath. Thank you all, both board members. I did. You just missed me. Thank you all the board members, a lot of meetings, a lot of late meetings. Thank you to the applicants and your patience as well as we worked through this. Planning's sometimes a lot harder than zoning, so it's collaborative, but thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank the board for your dedication, your commitment to doing this.
I am at this point going to become a pumpkin and go pick up my kid.
Thank you, Logan, for staying. Sorry to lose money.
I imagine it probably won't be very much longer.
I'm probably inclined to move towards
I
adjourn
like walking out.
based on the time. I will
Move
just
to
like.
adjourn.
Alright, there's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
Second, what did I just second?
A motion to adjourn.
I'm with you.
Just short discussion on the motion. One of the things that was on the capital improvement plan, the board of selectmen's gonna be making some changes to that anyway. We should have no hearing, so when we get to the next meeting, solid waste management chapter, we can do that review quick and get that on. And we can do the checklist, and we can do the draft of the change based on the legislation. All three of those, I think, can be the priority. We have no hearing, so with that, I will be voting in favor of the motion to adjourn.
Can I add?
Aye.
Yes, any other discussion?
For the next agenda, can we add outside services? I think we need to take a look at
What is, just to make sure I understand, what do you mean by outside services?
we have outside services that advise us on warrant articles especially. And it seems to me that there are something like missing a definition in a warrant article is something that should have been picked up on by probably Central Regional Planning and definitely by town attorney.
Just so like what our process looks like when we're having a review of warrant
How do
articles.
we prevent things like that? Putting our fingers again, we don't, you have much more training in this than most people on the board, and we can't count on people like you being on the board all the time.
That makes a ton of sense. I just wanted to make sure I got it. So we'll add that to the agenda as well. If you have the notes, thank you,
I guess I
Cal.
wanna say one more thing about that. I'm not saying that Central Regional Planning isn't doing a good job. I think we get tremendous value and tremendous service from them. I think we need to add, it's an added level
Yeah.
of
It's
scrutiny.
hard.
Regular review of our contracts should be a thing we are doing anyways.
Alright. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 All opposed?
Aye.